Hi, welcome back to Weight Wisdom and part 2 of food fussiness and neophobia. In part 1 we looked at neophobia and we looked at this issue of children narrowing their food preferences as a way of protecting themselves from poisons and toxins. And we also considered how, if this is interpreted as food fussiness, this can lead to problems for the family in introducing the more healthy range and a balanced range of foods for the future. So today I'd like to look at children who are now considered food fussy in the family and what we can do to improve that. It's important to remember that food fussiness may not always be a consequence of neophobia, and there are other reasons why children become, as we say, food fussy. These might be psychological reasons. There may be reasons where children want to use food to control their surroundings, to attract attention to themselves, to control others or people around them. And it's a potent form of self-empowerment. So we need to understand and recognise it isn't always, in fact it's rarely about the food, and it's more often about other things. Parents can also inadvertently cause food fussiness or encourage food fussiness in their children through their own eating behaviours. And if they have poor approaches to food, quirky behaviours around foods themselves, this can quickly be picked up by the children and adopted by them. So parents being good role models is a very important aspect of encouraging children to adopt a balanced diet. Also, food refusal needs to be properly managed because children will quickly learn that they can legitimately refuse all foods except for their favourites. And then this becomes a classic power struggle. It's a tricky balancing act because parents must recognise that it's important to develop autonomy and food responsiveness in children, which is all about them being able to interpret their own internal signals for satiety and hunger and be able to respond to these, rather than always having to respond to external signals of when to eat, what to eat, when to stop eating, etc. At the same time, parents must offer encouragement and guidance so the child can adopt a nutritious and balanced diet, and this is a cornerstone of a wholesome family life. Often, parents see food fussiness as a benign quirk of their children, but this can also be problematic because this can lead to further food disorders in the child, and food fussiness may be the thin end of the wedge for other more serious eating disorders later in life. So it's very important to try to manage food fussiness in the best way. Now, most of the things that I've learned in my career have been not from scientific journals or books, but from ordinary people trying to manage these struggles. And a few of these now that have been successful, that people have told me have worked well, alongside some of the more strongly evidenced strategies that are in the evidence base, I'd like to share with you, and hopefully you can take one or two of these away with you to help if you are struggling with a child having food fussiness. So one of the key messages that always seems to come across is that of repeat exposure and repetition to a food. And just to illustrate this, I'd like to tell you a story about the carer and the pea. So we had a lady who was caring for a number of children, and one child, she reported to me, this young girl would never eat vegetables. All she would eat is chips and bland foods, the usual classic food fussiness type. So the carer decided she was going to get her to eat peas. So one day on her meal, she put one pea on the child's plate. When the plate was cleared away, the pea was still there. The next day, she put one pea on the plate. The next day, it was there. And so this went on. Eventually, one day, after about a week, the pea was gone. So the carer cleared the plate away and said nothing. The next day, she placed 2 peas on the plate, and the peas were gone. The next day, 3, and eventually the child started to eat peas. And then she told me she did the same with carrots. 1 sliced carrot, and she had to clear it away for about a week, but then the carrot was gone. And then she told me, and now she's eating 4 or 5 vegetables, and I'm happy with that. And the carer said to me, actually, do you know what? We never ever spoke about that. Funny that. And that was a great example to me of someone who'd worked out how to go about this, not to make a big fuss about it, to stick with the repetition, to stay with it, and through perseverance, she got there. And I don't suppose she does know what an enormous difference that will make to this young person, because some people get stuck in poor eating behaviours that they take with them through life, which has a terrible effect on their health throughout life. If we can't adopt a balanced diet, then I believe it really is going to lead to difficulties. So other things that I've heard that are helpful is make sure that you don't offer too large size when you're introducing new foods. Make sure they're only small amounts, rather like the carer and the pea. When you come to clear it up, don't make a big fuss about it. Also, try to use new foods alongside familiar foods rather than introducing all new foods all at once. Make foods look appealing so that you spend time to make sure the child will find it more acceptable. Children take a lot from the visual cues of food. It's also important to get the child used to new foods. So every week or every couple of weeks trying something new so the child is constantly exposed to the idea that new foods will be around them. A lot of people have told me that they blend foods into soups or sauces, and the children report not liking broccoli, but they've been eating it in their soups and they just don't know because the crafty blending approaches of parents have often worked. It's also important not to reinforce their likes. So many times I've heard people say, "Oh, you won't catch my Billy eating that. He never eats that kind of thing." And Billy sat there grinning away thinking, yes, that's right, that's condoning my eating controls here. So don't reinforce their eating behaviours by talking out loud to others about them. Play them down. Don't allow them to become an issue of control in the household. The other thing to consider is the child's appetite, and we've talked about the child's autonomy and their own internal cues of hunger. And if they report not being hungry at meal times, then you have two options. You can make a big song and dance about this, or you can clear their plate away and leave it at that. And I would say the latter is the important strategy to adopt. But then it's very important that an hour later, when the child tells you they're hungry, you don't start offering them the kind of snacks that they would prefer. You offer them the meal that you offered them the first time, or then they're going to have to learn to deal with that hunger. And this is how you're going to overcome some of these demanding behaviours around meal times. You might want to find friends that they have who can act as influencers, because children look to their peers for cues. And if you have friends who are good eaters, who like to eat a varied diet, then I would introduce them around to the house and allow your children to see them eating. And often, if they see their friends eating certain things, they will try them out. So that's something else you can do. You can involve your children in cooking and preparing foods, and this is very important. It can be done from a very young age. The sooner children get their hands on raw ingredients and food, the better, I would suggest. It gets them used to the textures, the colours, and it's this whole aspect of familiarisation. Ask the children to choose new foods that they haven't tried before when you take them shopping. They can choose a food, we can bring it home, and we can explore how we're going to prepare it, how we're going to cook it, and how we're going to try and taste the food. I think it's always important to try to develop a household idea that we always try foods. It's not important that we always have to eat them or like them, but we always try them. And probably one of the most important things you can do is to be a good role model. If children see you eating a balanced, varied diet, trying new things, then this is one of the most important aspects of socialization of food, to see trusted family and friends eating things in a wide variety of flavors and food types. Then this tells children that this is a preferred way of eating. Don't allow food to become a food fight. Don't allow it to become an issue of conflict within the family, because the child will probably win and they will get more power, and it will only make the situation worse. So if you can feel a food fight emerging, try to take a breath, calm, and adopt the don't make a big fuss about it, remove the food, but then don't cave in and start providing the child's preferred foods after that. It's also considered that 15 exposures are required before a child sees that food as familiar. Remember the carer and the P. If they refuse it once or twice or thrice, that's to be expected. 5 times, maybe 10 times is to be expected. So you have to be persistent, persevere, and continue with the same low key, continue presenting the food, eating the food yourself, making it familiar. Don't insist on plate clearing. Allow the child to determine how much food they want to eat. If they're hungry later on, you could remind them that they didn't eat all their food, but again, we're not going to start them providing them with the snacks that they want. And above all, try to avoid coercive approaches to food where you're trying to bribe the child to eat for a particular thing or leverage them into eating this or not eating that. Don't use food as a reward and certainly not as a punishment by withdrawing food. Food is for nourishment. It's not about behaviour, because if it becomes about behaviour, then this will actually start to create problems for you. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope we've got some ideas on fussy eating, and I would encourage you to think about these ideas. This list is on the website for download, so please feel free to download it and put it on your fridge as a reminder. And I wish you the very best of luck with that. And I look forward to seeing you here back at Weight Wisdom very soon. Thank you very much.